President Joe Biden met today with Israel's prime minister at the White House. Benjamin Netanyahu and the president also spoke with the families of hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th. On the campaign trail, Harris delivers a pitch to educators in Houston as she works to secure their union's endorsement. Former President Trump continues to take aim at the VP with attacks that some say cross the line into hate speech. We'll have more on that. With just 25 days until the Democratic National Convention, the search is on for who will round out the 2024 Democratic ticket. Ahead, we're going to speak with one of the possible contenders, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. Gómez and Aaron Navarro are covering the Harris and Trump campaigns for us, but we're going to start with Skyler Henry at the White House. Skyler, it's good to see you. I want to start with you and ask you about President Biden's meeting with the prime minister and also Vice President Harris, who's going to be meeting separately with Netanyahu. What can you tell us about the body language and the discussion that took place between the president and Netanyahu?
Sure. Decorum in the room, Nancy. As you know, the two men have known each other for decades, and so certainly interesting to see their posture, their body language, as it is relatively tense, all things considered, especially over the course of the last few weeks and months as the Biden administration has not only called on Israel to take steps towards a ceasefire in Gaza, but also look to try to do a bit more in terms of working on that hostage release deal. As it relates to the meeting between the prime minister and the vice president, officials have indicated that there will be very little daylight in terms of the president and vice president's posture as it relates to their stance on Israel. But also we should point out there that there is the possibility and expectation that the vice president is expected to press the prime minister even further on the terms of that hostage release deal and for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, as it relates to the conversations between the two sides, we know that at least in terms of the one-on-one conversations, the vice president and the prime minister last spoke one-on-one early in the administration, ironically talking about the security and peace and protection and prosperity between Israelis and Palestinians. But the White House has indicated that she has been alongside the president during their many conversations, especially since that October 7th attack.
And Skyler, it was notable that earlier today, Vice President Harris put out her own statement condemning pro-Hamas protesters who had burned the American flag here in Washington. What does that signify? And that doesn't mean that she's on the same page with Netanyahu when it comes to the Middle East conflict, does it?
Right. Certainly not. But it also gives her an opportunity, especially in this new role in terms of being the likely Democratic nominee, to sort of set a stance for herself, right? Condemning any of that violent protesting that we saw here in Washington on Wednesday night. But as I said before, it also gives her an opportunity to really sort of lay the groundwork, if you will, between her and the prime minister and sort of setting their own relationship. I think it will also be interesting to see how the prime minister decides to play this delicate dance, if you will, between the president, the vice president, and then, of course, he plans on meeting with former President Donald Trump on Friday, really putting his chips in multiple baskets, if you will, as we wait to see ultimately what happens in our elections in November.
Such a good way to put it. Skyler Henry at the White House. Thank you so much. Gómez and Aaron Navarro join us now. Welcome to both of you. And let's take a look first right off the bat at this new campaign video that the Harris campaign put out today. The first video starring Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
We choose a future where no child lives in poverty, where we can all afford health care, where no one is above the law.
So, Finn, what do you make of the fact that this new campaign video makes use right off the bat of Donald Trump's mugshot?
Again, showing that split screen between her prosecutor record and his recent conviction, right? And we've seen some of those billboards as well, where it shows her with the text underneath her face saying prosecutor, and with Trump it says convict, right? And you're seeing some of that. And I think, by the way, I mean, that video I think is a really, really polished, well-produced video. And of course, we did not see a lot of Beyonce with Joe Biden.
Right. A very different feel from the campaign. We're also getting much more casual press releases from the campaign today.
That's right. They are leading into the age issue, if you can believe it, Democrats are. They're pointing out that the 78-year-old man, Donald Trump, was on Fox, and in the press release sent by the Harris campaign said he was saying, quote, very weird things. So they're leading into the 20-year or so age gap between Vice President Harris and Trump.
No question. Aaron, you've been reporting today that both Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, and Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, will be holding a campaign event for Harris in Pennsylvania on Monday. It's wonderful that she's got this group of about a dozen governors, senators, cabinet members who are touting her, willing to stand up for her everywhere she goes because they're all in the running to be her potential running mate.
That's right. And the Harris campaign official notes they are likely to talk about Project 2025 as they kind of go on the offense against Trump. But I think there's a little bit of a contrast between how these two governors, Democratic governors in swing states, are approaching this whole sweepstakes process. Whitmer, in the reporting from our colleagues on the ground, they often say that she says she's committed to Michigan, that while she thinks America is ready for a two-woman presidential ticket, that she wants to serve out the rest of her term in Michigan. Shapiro, on the other hand, notes that Harris has a very deeply personal decision ahead of her, and that while he says he's focused on the work, he also wants to beat Trump. So at least at this point, Shapiro seems to be a little bit more open, publicly at least.
And Nancy, as we reported, two top contenders from two key battleground states in that Rust Belt state portion of the country that the Harris campaign knows it's important to try and win. So, I mean, it's a bit of an audition, isn't it? I mean, it feels that way.
Yeah, every appearance feels like an audition right now in this compressed time frame. Finn, former President Trump held a rally last night. He had said previously he was going to be nice. Last night he said, is it okay if I'm not nice? And he unveiled a whole bunch of new attacks on Kamala Harris. What did he say, and what does it tell us about his approach going forward?
I think his approach going forward can be summed up in one word, and that is aggressive. You know, aggressive towards Vice President Harris, and absolutely not nice.
He called her garbage.
He called her garbage. He called her. He went for it. And you've seen him these very attacks that are visceral and something that we haven't really seen in sort of this disciplined chapter. We keep hearing how that Trump is so disciplined now. This has been sort of a return to an earlier Trump that we hadn't seen in a while, not to this level. And I think that you're going to be seeing more of that. You're going to be seeing more of that with ads, more of that coming from the rallies and from the trail, and just across the board.
Harris has only been at the top of the ticket for about 4 or 5 days, so we don't want to read too much into new polls that we're seeing. But do they give us any early indication of where the race stands now and what her relative strengths and weaknesses might be?
So from the polls that we've seen and pollsters I've talked to, they note that it does make the race a bit closer. Trump maybe with a slight edge when you look at the horse race. But when it comes to the economy, some of the frustrations people had with President Biden, voters, at least now, don't necessarily tie Vice President Harris to that, or even the Afghanistan withdrawal. One pollster noted to me they don't really associate Harris with that turning point in Biden's political cycle. Immigration is something that Republicans have been really leaning into, calling Harris, quote, a border czar. At this moment, it is still a tough issue for Democrats, but pollsters I've talked to note that voters don't really understand what Harris's role in that is quite yet, which is why this opening, there's only 100 days left, but these opening weeks is an opportunity for both camps to really define who Vice President Harris is.
I do think that I think immigration is something that will challenge Vice President Harris going forward. I think right now you are seeing this bump, and we have seen essentially we're an evening of the race. We've seen it where there's a New York Times college poll that shows that essentially they're tied, 48-47, I believe. And but it is those battleground states, those 7 battleground states that we really have to focus on. Especially, and they've told us this, that Sunbelt state strategy, essentially, again, look at the southern part of the country, from North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, where they now feel more competitive than they did when Biden was on top of the ticket.
Right. They say that she has opened up more routes for them to win.
And the base is enthused. The base has a lot of enthusiasm right now.
And they're opening their wallets. Finn Gómez, Aaron Navarro, thanks so much. Appreciate it.